Good to be with you here again. Welcome to part two of our series about how to grow food regeneratively, safely, cleanly. Last week we did the impromptu kind of walk around, not all, but some of my gardening areas. And this week we're going to talk a little bit more about what it takes to have healthy soil, to build healthy soil, and what role do microbes play and why is all of this important? And so I'm going to go ahead and put an appropriate plug in for this stuff. This is 4G soil restoration. It's the organic growth burst product, and we're going to be talking about this. But this is what I've been playing around with now since February, and I've been having good results. So we're going to welcome Tom. First, I want to just say, I've been gone since last Thursday and got back last night. I was at a really cool event called Mountain Readiness in Harmony, North Carolina. It was a wonderful, wonderful time, a really good event, and I was really busy. The only problem, besides the rain every single day, it didn't seem to dampen spirits, but my booth was located right between two plant stands. That's like asking an alcoholic not to drink beer when he's surrounded by beer, right? I came home with some plants. I don't know how I got them into my car, but somehow I got a bunch of plants into my car. And I want you to see, I am a bona fide gardener. I am not one of those pretty glitzy girls that has to have fancy fingernails. My nails are dirty because today, before I came on here, I planted an aronia bush, an elderberry. This morning, last night and this morning, I planted 2 pomegranates, and I still have a fig to plant outside. Excuse me, not a fig, a kiwi, a climbing kiwi. So I just love to dig in the dirt and grow things, especially food. More often than not, my favorite thing to grow is food and shade. And to that, I'm going to welcome my friend Tom from 4G Soil Restoration. I met Tom at the Pennsylvania Association of Sustainable Agriculture conference back in February, and we struck up a good friendship, and he gave me some product to take home and try, and I've been using it ever since. And my only regret is that when he was at our event 2.5 weeks ago now, I forgot to grab some more. So with that said, Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, we are so glad to have you. And we have a lot to talk about today. I'm looking forward to learning from you myself. And I hope that our friends that are watching will have some questions, and pop them up there, guys, if you want to know anything. And we're going to get rolling. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what is regenerative agriculture, and why does it even matter? So we're all used to using glyphosate to kill weeds and using chemicals to grow plants. You can buy the Miracle Grow and all of those kinds of things for your garden. But that's not regenerative. And so I first really want to talk about, what is regenerative agriculture or regenerative gardening, and why does it matter? Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if we use all the chemicals like you're talking about, we will not have regenerative, because we are killing the microbes and the macrobes in the soil, the fungi, the bacteria. And to have regenerative agriculture, you have to have a live, your soil has to be alive and not dead.
Right. And what does it mean for the soil to be alive instead of dead?
Well, you will have earthworms. You will have good humus. You have good soil. You have good topsoil, and you won't say, "Well, look at this old hard clay."
Right.
Regenerative, you'll have that healthy, alive soil, and it is alive.
And it looks different, doesn't it?
It looks and smells different.
Yeah. So I was in North Carolina, as I mentioned, and I spent Monday night and Tuesday morning with my friends Amber and Bob, who have Mountain Readiness, who put that on, and they just bought a beautiful 40-acre piece of property, and they're terracing it and starting all kinds of things, and they're doing everything without chemicals. But I definitely noticed that as they dug away the hillside to create a terrace to plant, um, I think they're planting fruit trees up there. It's definitely clay soil. And I remember that on our farm, it wasn't necessarily clay, but it was hard packed soil, which is hard to grow anything, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So, how do you remediate that? I know what we did, but what do you do?
Well, I use our product.
Yeah. Do you use it on straight hard clay
Yes, ma'am.
and it loosens up? And
Yes, ma'am. It will flocculate the soil.
what does that mean to
Well,
flocculate?
it separates the soil particles, allowing space for air and water. This airspace is essential for creating a balance of air, water, soil, and water and soil. Without the space, the soil can only be either oversaturated or dried out. So we
Yeah.
are naturally loosening the soil, letting it breathe. And the more you use this type of a product, the deeper the soil will go,
Okay.
and the better water retention you will have.
And we can understand why that might be important,
Yes,
especially in climates that don't get adequate rainfall or
yes.
don't get a lot of rainfall. Okay. And then we talk about microbes in the soil and the necessity of microbes and including fungi, mycorrhizia, all of it's its own ecosystem, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And we have to foster that in order for it to thrive.
We do.
I know that we've sometimes looked at an example would be aspen trees out west, and that they reproduce and grow attached to one another underground. And so a single aspen is actually connected to millions of others across millions of acres. Is it like that in the soil with the fungi and the microbes as well?
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that they interconnect. They help plants take from the soil, but they also give back to the soil.
Yeah.
So it's very important for that healthy ecosystem.
Right. And if all that we do is put in chemicals and we're killing the microbes are there specifically to do a couple of tasks, including, do you want to talk about that, what they do?
Well, they help feed
Hmm.
and um, they just help with the nutrients in the soil. They help to feed each other. It's when you study it, it's such a complex system
Hmm.
that how important the bacteria and the fungi in the soil, the good bacteria and the good fungi,
Yeah.
not the bad fungi.
Now we talk about that there is actually no such thing as bad, that everything has its place, everything has its purpose, but when it's out of balance, then something becomes damaging instead of helpful. We've talked about that in the human gut in the past, and how even E. coli and salmonella, excuse me, are actually beneficial. It's when they overgrow, usually in the place of antibiotics or excessive carbohydrate intake, then those organisms, which in their proper balance are needed, become pathogenic. And is it like that as well then in the soil?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, and then when you raise the Brix levels or the sugar levels in the soil to 12 or above, then you help to stop the bug pressure, and you also help to stop or slow down or eliminate the pathogens in the soil. So
Okay.
raising that sugar level is very critical also.
That's something that I learned a lot about probably 20 years ago. There was a big movement to be monitoring your Brix levels and bringing them up by increasing microbial activity and increasing soil health generally. But people don't talk about that a whole lot lately.
No,
That talk has kind of gone by the wayside, but that's really important
it is, and it sweetens the tomatoes. It sweetens everything coming out of the garden.
and makes it stronger.
It makes it stronger. Like apples are sweeter, and your fruit trees are sweeter, and
Yeah. And your lettuces and your,
lettuces, everything comes out sweeter. And for cattle, when you raise the protein levels high enough, or the sugar levels high enough, they digest their protein much better. They don't have to chew.
ah,
They don't have to chew their cut as much. So the Brix level
yeah.
is so important for all of these things. And then it makes it healthier for us when we eat the vegetables or we eat the meat.
That's really interesting. I like what you said about the cows and chewing their cud. Most people probably don't even realize that they might have heard that term, but not understand what it is. And in fact, cows with a multi-chambered stomach, like a few other animals, they eat their grasses. They don't have top teeth. The tongue wraps around the grasses and the herbs, presses against the bottom teeth and cuts it off, and they chew it, swallow it, and then when you see them laying down and relaxing and doing this, they've regurgitated that vegetation, and it's like going through a second digestion, right?
Correct.
So what you're saying then is the higher the Brix level, the more nutritious the plant, the less difficult it is for the cow to chew her cud.
Right. And they'll put on more weight. Their coats will be slicker. That's the same way with horses. It's
Yeah.
when you take care of the soil, you raise the proteins, the vitamins, and the minerals in the soil. Well, then the soil feeds the plants.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people want to do foliars, but when you treat the soil takes care of all that.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I have incorporated foliar feeding in the past, but it always seemed to me to be counterintuitive because in nature, the nutrients are coming from the soil, not from the air or the rain. So why aren't we then focusing on building up healthier soil and putting the nutrients there? And when you have a healthy microbiology within the soil, then I think that what you're telling me is the microbes are healthier and stronger. They break down organic matter into essential nutrients. And then the microbes also help the plant to take those nutrients in. Am I right?
You're exactly right.
Okay. Now let's kick it up a notch. So we've talked about the healthy microbiology of the soil, and we should not ever underestimate the fungi.
That's exactly, yes.
Yeah, that's really important. My favorite shirt from our favorite company, Dirt and Devotion, has a cool shirt that has a beautiful display of mushrooms across the top, and it says, as if a play on Latin pronunciation, it says, "I'm a fungi." I love that shirt. And I wore it a few times and I thought I just can't. I'm not a guy, I'm a girl. So I gave it to my husband. He's worn it once. I need to get it out and make him wear it again. But I like that the emphasis on the fungi as well as the microbes themselves, because they work together. They work in concert to break down organic matter, put nutrients into the soil, and then pull that through the plant. And then that next level is plant to typically to animal.
Correct.
So if we regenerate our soils, we have stronger plants and we have stronger animals, like the cow chewing her cud. It's less work. She's incorporating more nutrients. So our animals are going to be much healthier on a regenerative soil and eating plants coming from that regenerative soil. And animals, of course, when they're raised properly, they're contributing both in nutrients and in the microbiology.
They are. Yes. Last summer, I have a friend I go to church with, and she has 17 horses, and one of her horses is and she's a barrel racer. And
Okay.
one of her horses was 25 years old, and the horse wasn't peeing or pooping good. So we took her soil down to bare ground, and um, we treated it with our product. We reseeded it. We watered it quite a bit. And 5 weeks later, we put her back on. This is a year later, and she's peeing and pooping very good. She's very healthy. She gets out there and jumps like a young colt and kicks her legs, and she loves that grass. She just goes
Oh,
up there.
wow. That's fabulous. I'd love to see a picture of her, by the way.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, most cattle are in a confinement operation in buildings and being fed whatever the farmer grows and carries to them, which typically has a lot of chemicals because they're not regeneratively farming.
right.
And the cattle have much shorter lives. Of course, if they're going for meat, they're going to have shorter lives anyway, aren't they? But if they're going for milk, their milk is devoid of nutrients, not devoid totally, but much fewer nutrients than if that cow were eating on regenerative grasses, regenerative pastures. Um, and that works then for all animals.
Yes, it does.
And I don't consider human beings an animal, but we are technically mammals. We are technically, I still can't say animals. We're created in God's image. We're not an animal, but where we are taking in nutrients from regenerative um, pastures and regenerative gardens and regenerative vegetable plots, then like that cow or that horse, we're also going to experience very real health boosts.
Yes.
Do you have any knowledge of anyone who has been able to change their health status just by switching, say, from conventional eating to consuming good food from regenerative farms?
You.
That is very true because I grew up on a very conventional diet. My mother clipped her coupons. She prided herself on feeding the 8 of us on as little money as possible. And that meant a lot of packaged foods, a lot of low fat foods because she believed that fat was harmful to us. And she grew up on packaged foods and she had massive health problems. Yeah. And she died of dementia after having every joint in her body practically replaced at least once. And I had some struggles growing up physically, but you're right that when I switched from a conventional diet, which I did pretty early on in when I got married, we were on a very tight budget, but I knew that I didn't want to buy Kraft macaroni and cheese. And I did buy, I can't believe it's not butter for a while, a short while, because I had seen my mother use it. And then I read the ingredients and I didn't have the understanding even close to what I have now, but I just thought this isn't real food. I shouldn't be eating it. So yeah, we grew most of our own food for nearly 30 years, and
Well,
it has had a profound impact on my family's health. Yeah.
well, God didn't create synthetic fertilizers
Nope.
or Roundup or all those things. So his in his perfect environment, they say milk is unhealthy and so many things today is unhealthy. Wheat is unhealthy. Well, they've changed God's original
They have.
seeds. Seeds they've changed. Um, at the end of World War II, they didn't know what to do with the fertilizers and all those chemicals. And they said, well, we'll sell it to the farmers. And so now the farmers think they have to have all these artificial products. And
Yeah.
people use our product and others like ours get a higher return without the fertilizers and without all the chemicals and healthier. And one lady I go to church with, she wrote a page and a half on everything she planted and everything she talked about. She had 2 and 3 year old beet seed, and almost
Oh,
every one of them came up, and they all germinated. So we're getting better germination. She normally would have had to keep replanting those 2 and 3 year old beet seeds, and her tomatoes were better, and she got more potatoes, and just the list went on and on. But it was healthier, and she couldn't believe how loose her soil is, and so it's the benefits of the healthy soil. Just like with the water retention, we've had a
oh yeah,
garden in our area. We had a very dry summer, and our garden stayed green the whole summer and just kept producing the whole summer. So
good.
instead of having ponding water, you get the soils open up more and more every year. Again, it goes deeper.
There's
And
supposed to be the soil is supposed to be a sponge.
right.
Yeah.
And so you just don't have the runoffs. I mean, you're still going to have some runoffs, but you're going to retain a lot more of that water.
That's really important. And then with a healthy root system, the plant is taking in the water along with the nutrients.
Correct.
Now, so do you have any ideas on, well, before I even go to that, let's talk about, this isn't an infomercial just for this product. So I don't mean that, anyone who's listening. But there are things in your product and things that we can be putting on our soil anyway that will increase the microbiology of that ecosystem that is the soil.
Correct.
So what are some things that are both in that product and things we can talk about, things also that we can do generally to improve our health, whether it's our garden or our pastures?
Well, this has kelp in it.
Mm-hmm.
It has mycorrhizal fungi, which is very important fungi. It has trace elements, which helps to fight fungal diseases.
So that would be like minerals, trace
Yes.
elements. Yeah.
And we
Okay.
have molasses
Yeah.
as a food. We have fish products in this. We have aerobic bacteria. We have 25 varieties of aerobic bacteria, and some of these bacteria help to increase the nitrogen in the soil, but they get into the soil and they start cleaning the soil. They start digesting
Oh.
toxins that's in the soil from the fungicides and the insecticides and all of that. Yeah, we did a study on mycorrhizal, or not mycorrhizal. We did a study on glyphosate,
Mm-hmm.
and the lab started out with 987 parts per million, and after 60 days, they took one test was 3.1, one was 6 something, and the other was 17
Parts per million.
parts per million. We reduced it that much in 60 days.
That is amazing. I knew that composting will break down almost all chemicals, not the PFAS, but I knew it would break down glyphosate. I didn't realize it did it that quickly and that completely.
Right. And these aerobic bacteria are very important because you have anaerobic and aerobic.
Yeah. I
And
wanted you to talk about that. Good.
anaerobic is without oxygen,
Mm-hmm.
and ours are full of oxygen. So the company tried to put together a package. So once we put these aerobic bacteria into the soil, they have nutrients there and they have the environment that they want to live in. So they're going to create this environment that they will thrive in. So once they get into the soil, they start multiplying very quickly.
Mm.
Water, rain is a very good catalyst. It helps them to take off. We also have humic substances, and again, the nutrient package for our bacteria and the resident bacteria. So we feel that this is, I won't say it's a complete package, but it's an awful lot of things to really help that soil get healthier and to help recreate topsoil. And I've studied from a PhD out of Australia, Dr. Christine Jones, and she talks about how quickly you can reestablish topsoil. So it doesn't take years to reestablish it. It can be done very quickly.
I even saw that on our farm with using the animals, free choice minerals, kelp, and then deep bedding in the garden.
Uh-huh.
So, 8 inches of tree mulch or 6 inches of straw in layers, and letting the animals break it up and fertilize as well. We very quickly went from hard packed soil that grew thistles and burdock and that kind of thing, which were there for a reason. They're soil remediators, but we went from that to thick, loose, loamy soil within just a couple of years.
Well, there's in Oregon, there was a contractor who built a new house. And of course, the yard was stripped down
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't get a shovel hardly in the ground at all. So he treated it with our product.
Okay.
And after 2 months and a couple inches of rain, he could get his shovel down 3 inches from not being able
Wow.
to get it in the soil at all. That's when within just a couple months' time. So
Wow.
once the bacteria get in, they just take off and they really proliferate rapidly. And again, they have many jobs, but one of them is to clean and but also to help loosen the soil. And
Wow. That's really interesting. That is fast. Yeah. And we did grow things pretty quickly. The first year that we started to do anything, we were growing. Um, uh, I'm sorry, I have set my phone to do not disturb, and I'm still getting disturbed. Um, so just that's a very short period of time. Um, I'm wondering, I have used things like kelp and liquid seaweed and fish emulsion and that kind of thing. Um, so by using something like your product or just using regenerative practices, your product is going to accelerate.
yes, it is.
It's going to accelerate that breakdown and feed the microbes so that everything happens much more quickly. And we need that. Now, within our own communities and even on our own farms, or excuse me, our own home sites, what are some things we can do to grow more food and also then to build community and a localized food system that is healthy and strong, that provides us with good, healthy foods to build healthy bodies?
Well, composting is very good to add. Manures are very good to add, but some manures can be anaerobic,
Mm-hmm.
and so you want to convert them to the aerobic. So there's so many things like leaves and so many different things that help the soil very much.
Yeah.
But our process helps to um, start digesting. How do I say this? Starts the digesting process before you put it in the soil, because once you put it in the soil, then the soil has got to do the work of helping it break down. So this kind of speeds it up. We have treated hog and dairy lagoons, and
Oh,
to
yeah.
help them digest those manures and the sludge. So once they put it on the fields, they're really getting down to a liquid going on the fields, and we've already helped to digest a lot of the manures that's in these pits, and we help, instead of off gassing the ammonia, is putting that back into the liquid that makes it a richer liquid.
And ammonia then provides nitrogen. Am I
Right.
correct? Yeah. Okay.
Nitrates and nitrates and nitrites. And
Okay. And that is in particular beneficial for the leaves and strong stems.
yes.
But So when you're talking about the lagoons, like the cattle and the pig lagoons, you're talking about a conventional farm where the animals are kept in confinement instead of out in the open. And
Correct.
then the lagoons are their stinky, slimy, nasty refuse that is actually normally very toxic.
Well, yes, and we help to change that toxicity.
I'd never thought about that. It just never occurred to me. It always bothered me.
Well,
Um,
in New Zealand, they had some lagoons, outdoor lagoons, that were so thick that they looked like dirt. And after 6 months, back to liquid.
wow. And it probably didn't smell
It
like
didn't
it
smell.
smelled before. Yeah. Because I've been close to some of those lagoons. I've actually sometimes wondered when visiting a conventional farm, and I had a friend who had a conventional beef farm, and many years ago they were given a grant by the state, and they put in a lagoon for their cattle manure while they were carrying in corn, and I don't know what all, I don't remember what all they were feeding, but there was this nasty, like a giant swimming pool, only it was filled with yuck, sludge.
Anaerobic sludge.
And
And
that's typically taken out and sprayed on the fields, and
yes,
it's toxic. It carries the toxins from the toxic agricultural practices. So what you're saying is by providing the right ingredients to turn the bacteria from anaerobic, thriving on no oxygen, to aerobic, thriving on oxygen and producing oxygen,
yes,
then you create a system that neutralizes toxins and creates nutrients that can go right on the soil and be very beneficial
instead of harmful.
instead of harmful. That is huge. Because that was something that always bothered me. I always thought, why does anybody think this is good? But if you can turn it to good, then I'm happy for that. Um, Now, when I go to make a new garden bed or fill a new container, I am not going to the store and buying whatever company's potting soil or garden soil. I am always looking for an organic and clean soil and compost, but those are dead um, because they've been sterilized.
They have been sterilized, yes.
So if we take even that and we inoculate it with this or something like it, it's going to turn from dead and presumably anaerobic to aerobic and
Correct.
beneficial. And I'm just going to open this. Maybe nobody could hear that, but oh, it's not an offensive smell, but there is definitely a smell coming out of this bottle. And I noticed one time when this or another bottle was fairly full and I opened it, it's fermenting.
Yes.
And fermentation is how composting is accomplished. And fermentation is almost, I'm not even aware that it's ever a bad thing.
Well, it's got a lot of energy in it too. The way it's processed, it has a lot of energy in it. So once
I
that,
can tell that when I open these things and they want to explode, like some of my ferments in my kitchen.
well, and with nitrogen, if we're using artificial nitrogen, then from what I've read, if I can say this in the right um, sentence, that it really makes what's in the soil lazy and not looking after what they really need.
Kind of like people sitting around eating Cheetos and Doritos and hot dogs instead of good food, and then they get unhealthy
Yes.
and don't do anything.
So it really makes certain things in the soil lazy, so to speak, because
Yeah.
with natural with natural nitrogen, the plants are going to be seeking them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we do get From the atmosphere, we do get carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And some of the best nitrogen we get is from lightning storms.
Oh, that is interesting to me. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so that God, through nature, gives us many things that's already there.
Yep.
We just, I talked to a young man that worked for a farmer in our area, and he was trying to get, he was disking his field, and the discs were, it was tearing up his disc. The soil was so hard and compacted. And I tried to talk to him, tell him to tell his boss about our product, and people don't want to hear. So many times people don't even want to consider something that would help be
Yep.
beneficial, because we as doctors get brainwashed in college about pushing pills. Um, the chemical people brainwash farmers on well, this here will give you more, and this will give you more, and it might give you more product, but you don't have, it doesn't have the nutrients in it.
Or the taste that
Oh,
go along with the nutrients.
exactly. Yeah. So many times in the store, you buy a really nice crisp apple, but it doesn't have a taste. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have that sweet taste like it should, because they're, you know, it's over chemicalized. And we, with our product, you don't need to lime in your fields. This will help to balance the pH of the soil
Hmm.
naturally. So
Okay. I have not tested my pH, and I do have a soil test kit that I'm intending to use probably next week. I'll do a soil sample and see how it comes out. Redmond from Real Salt in Utah. They gave me a couple of soil kits so that I could test, and I'm eager to do that and see what it looks like. But one of the things also that you mentioned is carbon. And there's a lot of talk, of course, in recent years about carbon sequestration and carbon causing climate change and carbon this and carbon that. And people completely misunderstand both the role of carbon, but also how carbon is supposed to be, the natural process of sequestering or holding carbon in the soil where it belongs in order to feed plants. How do we accomplish that? I mean, I know a couple of things, but you probably know more than I do.
well, I'm learning a lot about it. I don't know that I know more than you on that, but carbon is so critical in the soil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, um, you know, years ago, back in the 70s, they were talking about global freezing. And now they're talking about the global warming because of the carbon and all the flatulence from cows. And
It ain't the cows that are the problem. It's not the cows generally anyway.
no, it's not at all.
Yeah.
But the carbon is very, very critical.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't have the carbon in the soil, we're not going to have the healthy plants. So the ecosystem is so microbes and macros and
Mm-hmm.
all of the different network that's in that soil. If we break the network, then we won't have healthy soils.
Right.
The
And then we
food
won't.
network is very critical.
So if we don't have healthy soils, we don't have healthy plants, animals, or people.
No, we don't. Cancer used to be 1 in 100. Now it's just about 1 in 2 people.
I think that when I was young, it was less than that even.
It was probably, yeah.
Because I remember in the 60s and 70s, there were very few people I knew who had cancer. So it
You
was
didn't hardly
probably
ever hear of cancer.
greater.
Yeah.
No, but I do vaguely remember as a young adult hearing statistics that were coming up to 1 in 100 or 1 in 75 and eventually 1 in 50. And now 1 out of 2. Now that's including all types of cancer. And I have a different take on what cancer actually is anyway. And I'll get into that with someone else at a later date. I'm definitely not going to do it now.
And they're also saying a lot of dogs are dying from cancer.
Yes, yes. We've had a couple. We've had a couple die from cancer, and well, we've put them down, which at least in one case I very much regret. I would have preferred to wait. Um, and that gets into a realm, I believe that the problem is partly the food they're eating and largely the V word, because dogs are heavily injected. I'll just say that. Got to be careful.
Yes.
I can't say the word I want to say, but I've read statements from veterinarians who are just conventional veterinarians who have said the same thing. My belief is if we farm and garden and live in a regenerative manner, in other words, that we're always regenerating soil and regenerating clean air and clean water instead of just killing it all and making it toxic, that then we will be physically stronger and healthier as well as emotionally. And so it really behooves us to take good care of our soil. And if we take good care of our soil, what impact does that have on our water and our air?
Well, so many people want to spray their lawns and have their lawns pristine so there's no dandelions or anything, and we need the dandelions. We need bees very, very much.
Yes, we
And
do.
when we kill off everything that bees pollinate with in the spring, they need the dandelions, and so
Yeah.
and dandelions are healthy to eat. So, but everybody wants this perfect looking yard, and they don't realize how they're impacting bees. I have a friend that has bees, and he's lost whole hives, and just
Yeah, we have to.
and so this product, and I'm sure others like ours, is very bee friendly. It's not going to harm the bees in any way at all. And
Right.
so when you make the plants healthier, then they have, when the bees pollinate, they don't get killed off, so they can be healthier. Their honey's healthier,
Yeah.
all of the above. But it's so critical that we don't kill. Everybody wants to use the Roundup and not weed eat. They want to just spray stuff so they don't have to weed eat.
Yeah.
And it's just it's just we want everything pristine and perfect, but the perfectness is healthy, not looks.
Well, even in the Garden of Eden, uh, the first people had to work.
Yes, they did.
It wasn't just handed to them. They took care of the garden.
Yes, they did.
So they're all, and it's a satisfying work, but people do tend to get lazy, so they go out and they spray the Roundup. And I don't mean, I shouldn't have even put it that way because that sounds judgmental or harsh, but that is the easy way. Now, I have another friend, and you may know him, Howard. He has a product that is an a very strong apple cider vinegar based weed killer. It doesn't harm the microbes,
Right.
but it does destroy the innocuous weeds that you do want to get rid of in places where you like sidewalks and that kind of thing. He's not suggesting that we use it on fields or anything like that. But do you garden at home?
I used to. I don't right now.
Your wife, she doesn't?
No, she doesn't have the health for that.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. We always gardened, my dad and I, growing up. I don't remember using chemicals, but I'm not sure that we didn't. But I think that what I remember clearly of my dad is that he was a respecter of nature and God's design. And we had 3 gardens going every summer. We produced most of our vegetables for year round. I like to say, I don't suggest canning generally because it destroys the nutrients in any food. But I used to say that during the summer months when my mother was canning, it was hot. And I don't just mean temperature wise. It was hot. She was not happy. But then she was destroying the nutrients in the food that my dad and I had produced. And we didn't use animals. We didn't have this product. And I don't remember my dad having any kind of a seaweed emulsion or anything like that. When I'm in Maine, as I soon will be, there are some raised bed gardens there. There is a professional gardener there who thinks like I do and does things like I do, and it's been delightful watching her do the things that along the same lines. But one of the things that I did and she does is I will take a bucket or two down to the ocean, down to the cove, and gather up seaweed right out of the edge of the water and carry it on up to the beds and lay it out and let it break down. And that feeds the soil and makes great vegetables. It's kind of like your product in a bottle,
Right.
minus the fish and the molasses. But does the molasses, it ferments, does that also help bring up the Brix level in the plants?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Is it directly because of the sugars, or is it because the microbes are breaking things down to provide more nutrients that the plant then can generate the sugars to get the Brix level up?
Yes, I believe that. Yes.
Okay. And for those of you listening, if you've never heard of Brix, Brix, look it up. It is interesting. There's a device called a refractometer that was developed primarily for the wine industry. So in the wine industry, the vineyard is looking, or the winemaker is looking for a high sugar content, which then translates into a very healthy fermentation and a better tasting, better wine. So these devices called refractometers measure the sugar content in the grape itself, but you can use the same device to measure the sugar content in the sap of a plant.
Yes, you can.
And then the healthier the soil, the higher the sugar content, the higher the reading on the refractometer, the more nutritious and delicious it is for us.
Right. And they can do it in pastures. They can check their grass in the pastures and anything. Yeah.
I used to manage an email forum on Yahoo that was for people who were of like mind with the Weston A. Price Foundation, but it was a farmers and gardeners kind of group. And we talked about the refractometers and Brix levels a lot. I wish that people would start talking about it again. But without going on and on, I think we can agree, and we do agree, that in order to have healthy people, we need to start with a healthy soil microbiology, which includes the microbes, the fungi, and then their ability to break down and utilize nutrients, including minerals, that then generate healthy plants with high Brix levels. And then animals eat those plants, and we eat those plants too, or we eat the animals. But it's a multi-layered, I think fairly easy to understand. You start below the soil level. You build healthy soil by not using chemicals, by using essentially fermentation, whether it be directly composting or fermented, which is composting, or fermented products that make the nutrients available. Then we have the healthy plants, then the healthy animals, then the healthy humans. And what you're telling us too is that we can go from basically dead, not much going on at all, to very alive and productive in a very short period of time.
In a very short period of time. Yes. The garden, I think I spoke about earlier that was planted in a dry summer and stayed green the whole summer. Their corn had no worms. Their green beans, a little patch, produced 125 quarts off of 3 pickings, and it would have bloomed all summer, but normally after 3 pickings, people pull their plants up. Well, this would have gone all summer. The beans had very little bugs. The potatoes had hardly no bugs. So the a lot of the insects cannot digest the higher sugar levels, and you're making the plant stronger. And so there's a lot of just benefits that way. You're not spraying to get rid of your bugs, and because you
Remember
want
the
bugs.
story I told you about that farmer's field in Iowa?
Yes.
I'll just quickly relay that because it goes right along with everything that you're saying right now. And then we're going to start to wrap up. But um, back years ago, when there was all this talk about Brix levels and how to bring them up, and there were some products or some companies that were educating people, farmers and home gardeners, how to do all of this. Um, so the guys from one company in Minnesota got a call one day from one of their clients in Iowa, and the client said, you've got to come down. You've just got to see this for yourself. It was amazing. So I don't remember the man's name, but he told me firsthand about it. He said he flew down to Iowa, went to the guy's farm, and of course, Iowa is a heavy industrialized agriculture state. So they were growing, I think it was soybeans. And this guy was growing regeneratively, no chemicals. But all of the surrounding farms were growing conventionally using chemicals, and probably, I don't know whether they would have been genetically modified at that time or not. I don't remember. Probably so. But the point being that there was an invasion of grasshoppers or locusts. Locusts are actually grasshoppers that morph under the right conditions into more aggressive feeders called locusts. And they were attacking all of the fields of soybeans around. And it may have been corn. It doesn't matter. I don't quote me on that, but it doesn't matter which. But the point was that they were attacking all of the farmers' fields, just devouring. But they would fly towards this farmer's field, fly maybe just a foot or two in, and immediately fly back out because he was using regenerative practices and products on his field that made for a very strong plant, then a strong electromagnetic field that naturally repels the insects. That's always fascinated me. But it's like that whether it's a plant, an animal, or human. If we build a strong and healthy body by consuming the best foods produced using regenerative practices, then we are also resistant to parasites and to illness. Doesn't mean we're not going to get sick. It doesn't mean we're not going to get a tick or a mosquito bite. But I know that my experience in recent years has been that I don't think I've been bitten by a tick in years. I think 2 years ago, I found one crawling on me one morning or one night. And I don't get mosquito bites much at all. They don't bother me very much, whereas they used to. So I think it behooves us to be careful about what we eat and how we grow what we eat, and who we purchase are things like I suggest unprocessed milk from naturally raised animals on regenerative fields. So everything or most everything that we put into our bodies builds health, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And then besides that, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
And if we just watch nature and mimic nature, and we see the composting and the constant regeneration, the constant return of nutrients into the soil, the microbes and the fungi, breaking it up, devouring it, releasing nutrients, and the cycle just continues on and on. I actually would like to be buried beneath a tree and not in a vault or a regular casket, because I want to be part of that too for the future. If we have a future beyond me, I don't know. But Tom, where can we find you and your products?
Well, our website is 4gsoilrestoration.com.
Good. And the product is Organic Growth Burst. I want to show a picture quickly that Tom shared with me. There it is. Tell us about this maple tree.
Well, I had product delivered, and this truck driver last year, I had bottle of old product, and I gave it to him. This is a Japanese maple. It's about 33 years old. They planted it when they first moved there. So he treated it because it was dying. And even this spring, they thought they were going to have to cut it down. Well, he delivered more product to me, and he sent me that picture, and he says, I thank you so much. You saved our tree, and you can see how beautiful it is. And can I give you one more quick story?
Absolutely.
In Oregon, we treated ornamental grass. Ornamental grass, normally they get 2 clumps out of one set. So we did 3 ounces per gallon of water, and they were pleased. It improved the ornamental grass. But we did 6 ounces per gallon, and they not only had 2, they got 3 out of one clump, 3 separate plants. But what they were most amazed with was a root structure. And that's why I've had many testimonies from hay farmers, pastures. They're so impressed with the root structure. So the better the roots are, we know they go out and find the nutrients that they're looking for. They find all of these elements and the trace elements they're looking for.
That's really, really neat.
Yes.
That reminds me of some of the photos in Dr. Price's Nutrition and Physical Degeneration book, where he's looking at and taking pictures of different methods of growing plants. And this is before industrialized agriculture, but he's looking at the roots. And yeah, you can see the difference between a plant grown in soil that is hard packed and probably lacking microbiology, and then the plants of those that are actually being continually replenished with compost.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In particular, I remember he went to the Scottish Outer Hebrides Islands, where they didn't have wheat and all of those assorted grains. They had oats. They ate oats every day, and the straw from the oats was the thatch on their homes. And then within the homes, they would have their fires for cooking and for warming. And so the ash, or the smoke rather, from the fires would saturate the thatch roof. And every so often they would replace the roof with fresh thatch. And it was their practice to take that thatch, that smoke infused thatch, and put it on their oat fields, and it produced great crops of oats. But there was something about if it was fresh, it probably hadn't begun to break down. This is Richard, by the way. Richard likes to say hello. Hello, Richard. Yeah, so there was something about the composting process, or the beginning of the breakdown. And I think it also involved, if I remember right, a time, that a shorter period of time that the straw was, you're supposed to let your field go fallow every so many years. And when that is not the case, then the soil is burnt out. You need to refresh it with fresh food and allow it the time to break down and regenerate. Yeah, well, everything is so intertwined, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, and it just fascinates me. Richard, someday you will be compost too. Probably. Well, Erin will put a link in our show notes so that people know where they can go to find your product. I'm ordering more, and I have that peach tree I mentioned to you earlier that I need to give it a little bit of help. It's stressed a little bit. So maybe I'll take a picture of that before and after so we can show people later and put it up later. But
yeah, I treated a pear tree that had half rotten pears, and they were all falling off. I did the drip line of the tree, did about a 3-foot swath around the drip line. It was raining. It got washed in good. The next year, big healthy pears. I don't have any before or after, but the next year, delicious big healthy pears.
Well, I will do that with mine. I'm hopefully going to do that yet today. I'm really itching to get back out there at my garden, and my yard is my garden. I'm working on that too. So I'll do some before and some after, and we'll see what it looks like in a couple of months.
Okay, sounds great.
So yeah, well, Tom, thank you so very much. We
Well,
really
thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking with you and learning from you and sharing, and everyone else listening. You can still ask questions on YouTube. Once we say goodbye in just a moment, the comments will go away. But on YouTube, you can certainly ask questions, and we'll answer. I can send them off to Tom, and if I don't have the answer, or we can put our heads together and figure it out. And we just really appreciate your attention. We appreciate your time, Tom. And we'll be back next week with another show. We have a couple of really interesting things coming up, so we're excited to share with you. And we'll share Richard too, maybe. All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Have a great week. There.